prudent and fair decisions. Forgive us for our shortcomings and help us to remain faithful to our sworn duty of upholding the Constitution. Mold us to become trustworthy, diligent, and deserving leaders of this nation. Our loving God, may you bless everyone in this session hall with your wisdom and vision, so that each of us would realize that everything we do and accomplish here should be in accordance to your will. All this we ask in your holy name. Amen.
Amen. Secretary, please call the roll.
The Honorable Senators Angara, Aquino, Binay, De Lima, Drilon, Ejercito, Escudero, Gatchalian, Gordon, Honasan, Monteveros, Lacson, Ligarda, Pacquiao, Pangilinan, Po, Recto, Soto, Trillanes, Villanueva, Villar, Soberi, Senate President Pimentel.
With 15 senators present, the chair declares the presence of a quorum.
Mr. President, I move that we approve the journal of the 67th session, Monday, March 12, 2018.
Approve.
Approve.
Reading.
May I have a 1 minute suspension, Mr. President?
Session suspended.
Ready to resume.
Session is resumed.
Mr. President, I stand corrected. I move that we dispense with the reading of the journal of the 67th session, Monday, March 12, 2018, and consider the same as approved.
Any objection to the motion? Hearing none, the motion is approved.
Mr. President, we have guests in the gallery. Let me first greet the interfaith and multi-sectoral groups, Filipina, the Pascres Youth, United Youth for Peace and Development, the Philippine Mission Partnership Incorporated, Elizabeth Young, care of Senator Aquino. Also the Dr. Jikian Kang, the President of AIM, Ms. Georgina Banzon, the guests of Senator Pacquiao, Municipal Councilors of Malapatan, Sarangani Province, the Polytechnic University of the Philippines, Santa Mesa, Manila, Bachelor of Science in Political Economy, the Mayor of Santo Tomas, Batangas, Mayor Edna Sanchez, Honorable Armenio Silva, Vice Mayor, and the Sangguniang Bayan members, and Representative Maria Teresa Collantes, of course, the 3rd District of Batangas representative. And then also, Mr. President, we have our guests, headed by Mr. Freddie Aguilar, Mr. Anthony Castelo, Chairman of the Dakilang Lahi Foundation, Judge Santa Cruz Jr. of RTC-QC, Jovi Aguilar, Tam Divine and Mike Austria, Sabina Di Malanta, Ms. Emmy Domingo, Kokoy Aguiluz, and Presi Garcia, all from the music industry, Mr. President. We'd like to welcome them to the Senate.
Welcome to all of our guests.
Mr. President, I move that we proceed with the reference of business.
Any objection? Hearing none, motion is approved.
Bills on first reading. 1739, an act amending sections 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 11, 12, 18, 19, and 21 of Republic Act number 10591, otherwise known as the Comprehensive Firearms and Ammunition Regulation Act. Senator Recto.
Referred to the Committees on Public Order and Dangerous Drugs and Ways and Means.
1740, an act assisting young athletes by providing programs and incentives for their development. Senator Maria Lourdes Nancy Binay.
To the Committees on Youth and Sports.
1741, an act establishing the Philippine Marine Corps, defining its powers and functions, appropriating funds therefore and for other purposes, Senator Maria Lourdes Nasi is Binay.
To the Committees on National Defense and Security and Finance.
Resolutions. Proposed Senate Resolution number 677. Resolution commending and congratulating the Outstanding Young Men 2017 awardees, Senator Sani Angara.
To the Committee on Rules.
678. Resolution directing the Senate Committee on Sports to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the efforts of the Philippine Sports Commission, the Philippine Olympic Committee, and the entire sports community to achieve the ultimate goal of winning the Philippines' first gold medal in the Olympics, with the objectives of reviewing the implementation of the existing laws on sports development, and to rally the private sector and the public for united support for Filipino athletes. Senator Grace Poe.
To the Committee on Sports.
679, resolution directing the Senate Committees on Trade, Commerce, and Entrepreneurship, Economic Affairs and Labor, Employment and Human Resources Development in aid of legislation to look into the implications and effects of the increase in prices of canned goods and basic commodities vis-a-vis the minimum wage and purchasing power of the Filipinos, with the intention of formulating approaches to assist the citizens, including subsidies, financial aid, non-monetary succor, and others. Senator Grace Poe.
To the Committees on Trade, Commerce, and Entrepreneurship and Economic Affairs.
Additional reference of business resolution number 680, entitled Resolution Congratulating and Commending the Senate Defenders for winning the UNTB Cup Season 6 on 12 March 2018 at the Smart Aranita Coliseum, Quezon City. Senator Drilon.
To the Committee on Rules.
Mr. President,
Majority Leader.
with the consent of the Chamber, I move for the consideration of PS Resolution 658.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
May we ask the Secretary to read only the title of the measure without prejudice to inserting into the records the entire text of the resolution.
Resolution recognizing the Filipino international singer and composer Freddie Aguilar for his lifetime outstanding contributions to the Philippine arts and culture.
Mr. President, may I be recognized to sponsor the measure, Mr. President?
The Majority Leader is recognized to sponsor the measure.
Mr. President, my dear colleagues, this coming Sunday, March 18, will mark the 40th anniversary of the release of the phenomenal song, Anak, by the legendary Filipino international singer and composer, Mr. Freddie Aguilar. The hit song, Anak, was released in 53 countries, translated in 29 languages, and re-recorded in more than 100 versions, and sold 33 million copies worldwide. Billboard reported that the song was the #1 in the United States for 2 weeks and world hit of the 1980s. As of 2006, it was unsurpassed as the all-time highest selling record of Philippine music, the only Filipino song and artist to achieve such a feat. Mr. Aguilar, or Freddie, to his friends, has been composing songs that evokes love, nationalism, and timely social messages while transcending social classes. To address the ills of society, he has written songs like Magdalena on prostitution, Katarungan on injustice, Para sa tunay na pagbabago on the drug menace, Mindanao and Luz Biminda, to convey his deep-seated love of country, and Bayan Ko to unite and seek change in the country's leadership. He is the only Asian singer and composer who broke into the Western market and gained massive global recognition, bringing pride and honor to our country. Thus, his unceasing nationalistic contribution to the Philippine music and culture warrants recognition. I know all this, Mr. President, because I was the one who produced his legendary song, Anak, back in 1978. So, Mr. President, my dear colleagues, I therefore seek your support and approval of PS Resolution 658.
Motion to approve na yun.
Mr. President, I move to make all senators become co-authors of the resolution.
So is there any objection to the motion? Okay, hearing none, the said resolution is approved with all senators as co-authors.
Thank you, Mr. President. May I have a 1-minute suspension to allow Mr. Freddie Aguilar to receive the resolution from the Senate.
Session is suspended.
Champions daw, sama daw tayo. Unless may sample.
Kasi kayo daw ang kasunod.
Pinakibaba.
Sirang ka sa mundong ito. May kanta na. Congratulations. Thank you po. Hindi siya pwede po eh. Ah.
Picture your seatmates.
Papaturo pa mag-gitara. Ready? Okay na. 21 na ngayon.
We're ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session is resumed.
Mr. President, with the consent of the Chamber, I move for the consideration of PS Resolution 680.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
We ask Secretary to read only the title of the measure without prejudice to inserting into the records the entire text of the resolution.
Resolution congratulating and commending the Senate defenders for winning the UNTV Cup Season 6 on 12 March 2018 at the Smart Araneta Coliseum, Quezon City. Senator Drilon.
Mr. President, to sponsor the measure, I move that we recognize the Minority Leader, Senator Franklin Delon.
The minority leader is recognized.
Mr. President, it gives me extreme pleasure and a distinct honor to be able to stand before this chamber to sponsor the resolution congratulating and commending the Senate defenders for winning the UNTV Cup Season 6. Mr. President, last night, the Senate defenders made the Senate of the Philippines proud when it won for the very first time the championship trophy of the UNTV Cup Season 6 at the Smart Araneta Coliseum in Quezon City. Mr. President, the UNTV Cup was conceptualized by Kuya Daniel Rozon in 2012 as a charity basketball league dubbed as Liga ng mga Public Servants to better serve the public through sportsmanship, camaraderie, and healthy competition. Sponsored by the members Church of God, headed by Brother Eli Soriano, the UNTV Cup Season 6 opened last August 28, 2017, and drew no less than 14 government agencies. The Senate defenders, Mr. President, are composed of co-captains, Senators Sani Angara and Joel Villanueva. Wala bang palakpak dyan? And our Senate staff composed of Director Ronald Golding, Joey Flaminiano, Marlon Legaspi, Jeffrey Sanders, Gary Keith Sevilla, Harley Nang, Romel Balboa, James Mangaran, Christian Andaya, Michael Dan Omega, Samuel Marata, Warren Tan, Reynaldo Malaga, Patrick Parauan, Ryan Endaya, and the team manager is no less than the Senate President pro tempore, Ralph Recto. Bonus. And we had as an assistant coach Carlos San Pedro Fermin, Mark Anthony Marcos, Anthony Emmanuel Lim, and the support staff Richard Dino, Renato Sison, and Adoracion Cuevas, who gave the Senate of the Philippines its back-to-back championship trophies in basketball after having won the MBL and the UNTV Cup in 2018. It also is important to note, Mr. President, that the most valuable player came from the Senate Defenders team, and that's our open close quote import, Jeffrey Sanders, who speaks fluent Tagalog. Sabi po ni Sani Angara, tubong Olongapo, kaya magaling mag-Tagalog. The Senate advocates showcased, or Senate defenders showcased grit and determination by having a Cinderella ending with a 2-0 win in the title series against Malacanang PSC Camao, and has a winning record of 12 wins, 3 losses. Last season, Mr. President, the Senate defenders also had a perfect record. They did not win any game, 0. But today, they stand proud as having won the championship only after 1 year. Last night, we witnessed the game. It was fun, it was thrilling, but for the record, I must put my admiration for the playing ability of Secretary Bongo. Talaga po nagulat ako, magaling talaga. And he made us suffer for the first few minutes. Apart from the honor that they gave to us, the Senate defenders also won 4 million cash prize. But this is not to be distributed to the senators nor to the members of the team. It will be enjoyed by the designated beneficiaries of the team, the Kaith Foundation, helping the cancer-stricken children, Pangarap Foundation, who helps school children, street children to have education and better life, and Tahanang Mapagpala sa Immaculate Conception Foundation. This is the home for the elderly. In fact, Mr. President, the historic win of the team is another living proof of the talent of our Senate staff, our senators, the skill and passion in basketball that bring pride and honor to the institution. It is therefore with great pleasure and honor that we move that we adopt this resolution to congratulate and commend the Senate defenders for winning the first championship trophy of the UNTV Cup on March 12, 2018. So moved, Mr. President. And with the consent of the Chamber, I ask that all members present be made co-authors.
Senator Recto.
With the permission of the President, just a query. I heard the name of Bongo, who played for the Malacanang team. Is that correct?
That's correct. And in fairness, he played very well.
Very well. Now, I hear that there is a rumor that Bongo is running for the Senate. Is that correct?
Well, I'm hard on hearing, Mr. President, so I haven't heard.
Would the gentleman know the reason why Mr. Bongo is interested in running for the Senate?
So that he can join the Senate Defenders
Basketball team. That is correct, Mr. President. Thank you.
Are we interested in importing Bongo? Yeah, Majority Leader.
I call for the previous question, Mr. President.
So the motion is to approve the resolution and to make all senators co-authors. Is there any objection? Hearing none, the motion to approve the resolution is approved. Senator Villanueva.
Mr. President, we'd like to take this opportunity to thank our dear colleagues, especially the Minority Floor Leader, for sponsoring this very historic resolution on the part of this representation and the part of this institution. We'd like to put on record how much we appreciate the support of the entire Senate as an institution, from the Senate President to our General Manager, Senate President pro tempore, and of course our Senate Minority Floor Leader, who's been watching our games, Mr. President. He stayed the whole game yesterday, last night, and every time he comes and watch our games, Mr. President. Hindi ho kami natatalo, kaya nabigyan na ho siya ng title na Lucky Charm of the Senate Defenders. We also would like to thank those who came, Senator Bam Aquino and Senator Mig Subiri, who through their all-out support last night, they were a source of inspiration last night. And of course, our Senate Defenders team captain, Senator Sani Angara, who's been our inspirational leader to win all these games and for the Senate institution. Again, we'd like to put on record that the 4 million cash prize that we won last night will go straight to Tahanang Mapagpala Kite Foundation. These are cancer survivors, and Pangarap Foundation. And so, just to put on record that it will all go to these 3 foundations, and we are awaiting to hear the Senate President and the Senate President pro tempore's response. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Senator Angara.
Thank you, Mr. President. We'd like to extend our gratitude to the Minority Leader. It just shows that his sponsoring of this resolution shows that when it comes to basketball, we may not agree on all things, but when it comes to sports and basketball and the good of the Senate, we are united in pursuing that goal. So we thank the veteran legislator from Iloilo for his magnanimity in sponsoring that resolution. And again, I add my voice to our co-captain, Senator Joel, who I must thank for bringing that winning culture, because, and I thank the Minority Leader for only mentioning last year's record and not the previous 3 years' record of the Senate Defenders. But we'd like to thank the leadership for his support in the past, and of course present was Secretary Lutz Barbo in many games, who along with the Minority Leader were our lucky charms, and added by the presence of Senator Mig, Senator Bam yesterday, of course to our manager, Senator Ralph Recto, who inspires us in many ways, not all of which we can mention today, to Senator Nancy and the other senators who permitted their staffs to practice and play for us. We also would like to also thank our coach, Mike Fermin, and of course our general manager, Attorney Rodel Dasil, who was able to scout and select players from the hundreds of staff members here in the Senate. He's present in the hall, bringing that very large trophy from UNTV. Mr. President, dear colleagues, we'd like to thank, of course, our Senate teammates, but most of all the Senate staff, who really were the proverbial wind beneath our wings and gave us the support and energy when our energies were lagging. And we'd like to state for the record that I think maybe 70% of the players of the Senate basketball team would qualify for many senior leagues in the barangays. And 90% of the budget went to massage therapists who would have to stretch us for many hours after our games, Mr. President. But again, this message has gone on too long. We'd just like to express our heartfelt thanks to the Minority Leader, to all our colleagues, and to the Senate President and all the members of the Senate family who have made this year a very memorable one. And the fact that we defeated the Malacanang Kamoo shows that the principle of checks and balances is very much alive. Mr. President, thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. President, yes, may I have 1 minute suspension, Mr. President, to allow our colleagues to have a picture taken with the gigantic trophy.
Session is suspended. Tanungin natin si Captain Ball.
mauna. Oo nga pala. Oo nga pala. We're ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session is resumed.
Before the business of the day, Mr. President, may we recognize Senator Mig Subiri for a manifestation.
Senator Subiri is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. This will only take less than 2 minutes. But before I recognize my special guest, I would like to congratulate Senate defenders for their fantastic win last night. Lampaso po yung kalaban. This was not a close game. They beat the opponent by almost over 20 points. And I got to see firsthand how Senator Joel and Senator Angara were playing basketball so well. We must commend them for that. Hindi lang po sila pang-pamilya, pang-sports pa. Magagaling. At yung iba nating staff, Mr. President, na akala mo may mga rayuma na. Pagdating sa basketball court, ang bibilis ng galaw nila. So we'd like to congratulate all of them. But we have here today, Mr. President, if we had earlier the singer of Anak, Freddie Aguilar, who is well known in the music industry, or the Philippine music industry. We also have the Freddie Aguilar of the Filipino martial arts with us, Mr. President, being a practitioner of Kali Eskrima Arnis. I've known him even when I was a young boy at 16. He was already training special forces units, and Spetsnaz units, and other commando units around the world, including law enforcement in the United States. He is the head of the Pikititirsia Kali Pilipinas, no other than Grand Tuhon Leo Gahe Jr. is with us here, Your Honor, and Tuhon J. Batukalan. So, I'd just like to put that on the record that they visited us today. Maraming salamat.
Welcome to the guests of Senator Subiri.
Thank you. Mr. President, I move to resume consideration of Senate Bill 1738 under Committee Report 277.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
This is the measure on the Philippine identification system. Yesterday, Senator Pampilo Lacson delivered his sponsorship speech on the measure. However, there were a number of members of the Senate who wish to co-sponsor the measure today. So let's start off by calling on the recognizing, Mr. President, the principal author of the measure, the Minority Leader, Senator Frank Dillon, to co-sponsor the 1738.
The Minority Leader is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. As Minority Leader, this is the first time I am sponsoring a measure on this floor. Mr. President, my distinguished colleagues, I rise to co-sponsor Committee Report number 277, which recommends the approval of Senate Bill 1738, entitled An Act Establishing the Philippine Identification System. First, let me, at the outset, spread into the record my appreciation to Senator Lacson and the Committees on Justice and Human Rights, Finance, Public Information, and Mass Media for giving priority to this measure. I have filed this measure consistently for the past 2 Congresses. It is only now that it was given life by this chamber. As early as 1992, during the administration of then-President Ramos, I already supported the idea of putting a national ID system in place in recognition of the need to have a streamlined effort in the bureaucracy for the availment of benefits by the public. The apprehensions against a national identification system are rooted mostly from fears that such system will threaten the individual's security and right to privacy. Implementing a national ID system is seen as a threat to our civil liberties. Mr. President, there is nothing farther from the truth. But distrust of government intervention and government systems has blinded us to the benefits of a national ID system and has caused past Congresses to abandon the idea altogether. As a result, our countrymen have no choice but to adhere to a system of fragmented and single-purpose IDs. You open a wallet and you will find a driver's license, a voter's ID, an SSS ID, a PhilHealth ID, a tax account number, in the case of the majority leader, a senior citizen's ID, among others. Narinig mo ba yun to? Hindi. Sadly, a large number of our congressmen do not even have any form of identification. Mr. President, the joke is that in Sabah, the Filipinos can be easily identified. Kung wala kang ID, Pinoy ka. It is an embarrassing situation which should no longer be allowed to persist. Mr. President, it is high time that we shift our perspective from viewing the measure as a security threat to our privacy to an issue of providing a better and more efficient access to social benefits, to those who need it most. Associate Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court Ruth Ginsburg has said, quote, "So often in life, things you regard as an impediment turn out to be great good fortune," end of quote. We jealously guard our privacy as provided under the Bill of Rights, and rightly so. It should not be forgotten, however, that Article 2, Section 9 of the same Constitution states that, quote, "The state shall promote a just and dynamic social order that will ensure the prosperity and independence of a nation and free the people from poverty through policies that provide adequate social services, promote full employment, and a rising standard of living and an improved quality of life for all," end of quote. Over the years, Mr. President, the government has pursued such constitutional fiat through the delivery of benefits and services rooted in the principle of social justice. Unfortunately, bureaucratic red tape has stood as a perennial bottleneck to the full achievement of an enshrined policy. Drawing off the immense advances in information technology, this measure seeks to establish a unified system to accurately and swiftly identify individuals seeking basic services from the government. Such innovation endeavors to grant wider access to and ensure efficient delivery of basic services by cutting red tape and preventing fraudulent transactions in government. As an immediate benefit of this measure's passage, unwarranted delays in government transactions will be averted, as the Filipino ID card will be the only proof of identity government agencies and institutions will require. Mr. President, in my book, the passage of this bill will yield the following benefits. First, efficient delivery of and access to government services. During the committee hearings on the tax reform measure, many questions were raised on the administrative portion of the cash transfers that will help ease the impact of the drain on the poorest segments of our society. One of the challenges identified by the Department of Finance is how to provide the 5.6 million additional beneficiaries with IDs, particularly the 3 million families in the rural areas. This representation emphasized the importance of a reliable ID system to facilitate the distribution of the monthly cash transfers to the beneficiaries. A study conducted by the World Bank shows that a country's effectiveness increases if it has an integrated and electronic ID system. The proposed system would initiate the creation of a transparent and reliable registry which would ensure that every Filipino is accounted for. It can help curb leakages in the delivery of benefits, ensuring that government resources reach the intended beneficiaries. The second benefit is financial inclusion. The measure will aid financial institutions in performing their customer checks to establish a client's identity. This can help address the common problem of failure to access financial services due to lack of sufficient and reliable identification. The third benefit is public safety. A complete and centralized database is useful in the event of emergencies and in addressing concerns of public safety. The outbreak of the MERS virus in 2014 is often cited as an example on how the existence of a national ID system could have made the difference. It took the Department of Health a full week to track down passengers of the Middle Eastern Airlines who have been exposed and might have been infected with the virus. A national ID system with updated information on every Filipino could have helped the Department of Health to promptly track the affected passengers and give them timely care and the instructions needed. Privacy and service delivery, Mr. President, is not a zero-sum game. It need not accept less of one and get more of the other. The measure seeks to find a delicate balance between enhancing the system of legal identification for better service delivery and protecting the right to privacy. It limits the type of information collected and the purposes for which it may be used. It protects against unlawful disclosure of information and punishes those who will subvert the system for unlawful ends. In addition, the application of the National Identification System is subject to the provisions of the Data Privacy Act. The Asian Development Bank, Mr. President, regards the legal identity as essential component of inclusive growth. Though great strides towards exclusive growth have been made in the recent years through the establishment of programs such as the Pangtawid Pamilya Program, complete inclusive growth continue to evade us. My dear colleagues, the creation of the national ID system may just be the missing link that would help us seize the goal of having a meaningful inclusion. For these reasons and more, Mr. President, I join Senator Panfilo Lacson in seeking your support for the urgent passage of this measure. Thank you, Mr. President.
Majority Leader.
Mr. President, to co-sponsor the measure also, I move that we recognize the co-author, the President Pro Tem, Senator Ralph Recto.
Senator Recto is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Majority Leader. Mr. President, I have been advocating for a PhilHealth-based national ID card long before I was elected to this body. Years ago, when the plan to create a national ID system was driven by security concerns, I countered that such an ID will only garner high social acceptability if it will have multiple uses and will not just be a laminated dog tag. I said that if the benefits one may derive from using that card are clear to the bearers, like a card that can be used in a medical emergency, then they will be happy carrying it. As that famous advertisement goes, people will not leave home without it. And I am happy to note that such concept has been met in the specs of the Philippine ID system proposed in this bill. I thus congratulate the sponsor, Senator Lacson, the principal author, Minority Leader Dillon, for the card's excellent design specifications. Free, portable, multi-purpose, and safe, in which the imputed information on a citizen will not be divulged, released, sold, leaked, maliciously amended, or the culprit will stay in jail for a long time and pay a high fine. Mr. President, at a time when a library of films can be compressed into a device as big as a thumbnail, there is no reason why people should still carry an accordion of ID cards in their wallets. Under this bill, the proposed card functions as an anti-red tape amulet. By simply waving it, the citizen is given open sesame powers in many government offices. It can be used to apply for loans with GSIS, pay SSS dues, and take out a housing mortgage from Pag-ibig. It can be used to apply for a driver's license or renew a passport or pay taxes. and during elections, presenting it is enough for one to cast his vote. It can be used to access state services or for admission in government institutions, whether in college to study or in a hospital for treatment. It can be used to open bank accounts, purchase goods, and similar commercial activities which require the establishment of one's identity. Mr. President, with the promise this ID holds, I could only hope for its faster rollout. To achieve this, we must anticipate implementation problems on two areas. First, if local governments will serve as registration sites, then perhaps some sort of assistance must be given them, specifically those with understaffed and under-equipped local civil registrar's office. But this can be addressed in the 2019 budget. Second, if an estimated 4 million Filipinos do not have a birth certificate, which is identified as the basic supporting document for registration, then the provision allowing the presentation of alternative proofs of identity should be made clear to government officers involved in registration. Third, it should be conveyed clearly that during the period of registration, failure to possess a card does not deprive a citizen of government service. Mr. President, there were two dominant schools of thought promoting the national ID. There is the security community who believes that it can aid in policing. There are our economic managers who think that such an ID will plug the leaks in the use of government services. Sa madaling salita, security and savings po ang peg nila. To these, the Senate injected a third and better perspective. Service, a card that will serve the people. Maraming salamat po, Mr. President.
Who's next? Oh.
1 minute suspension, Mr. President.
Session suspend. Okay, so we will not
We
suspend.
withdraw our motion, Mr.
Yes, we will
President.
not suspend any more senators.
Are you going to sponsor?
Majority Leader is here. Majority Leader?
Sherwin. Make me laugh.
On deck, Mr. President, is Senator Richard Gordon, then Senator Gatchalian and Subiri, Mr. President. What is the...
Senator Gordon is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I was just having my lunch and my breakfast this afternoon at 3 o'clock, or rather at 4 o'clock. And when we were suddenly called, we thought that Senator Rector would deliver one of his brilliant long speeches. But it's all right. Mr. President, I rise to express my full support for Senate Bill number 277, which we have co-authored, also known as the Philippine Identification System Act of 2018. And Mr. President, I congratulate the author, the sponsor, Senator Lacson, for his brilliant steerage of this measure into law. Mr. President, according to the Identification for Development global data set of the World Bank, there are 126 countries with a national identification system. We are not one of them. It's been more than 45 years since the government first initiated the establishment of a national identification system. In 24 August 1973, President Ferdinand Marcos issued Presidential Decree number 278, instituting a national reference card system and creating the National Registration Coordinating Committee. In 1996, then President Fidel Ramos issued Administrative Order number 308, adopting a national computerized identification reference system. This issuance, however, was declared unconstitutional by the Supreme Court in 23 July 1998 in the seminal case of Blas Ople versus Ruben Torres et al. In April 2005, then President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo issued Executive Order number 420, which mandated the adoption of a unified multipurpose identification system for government by all government agencies, including government-owned and or controlled corporations. This led to the establishment of the Unified Multipurpose ID Card, or UMID, that is issued to the members of the SSS, or Social Security System, the Government Service Insurance System, GSIS, PhilHealth, and Pag-ibig. The constitutionality of EO number 420 was also put into question before the High Court, and on 19 April 2006, the Supreme Court eventually ruled in the case of Kilusan Mayo Uno, National Federation of Labor Unions, Kilusan Mayo Uno versus the Director General of the National Economic Development Authority, year number 1677-98 and 1679-30, that EO 420 is well within the constitutional power of the President to promulgate. The UMID system, however, has unfortunately left out millions of Filipinos, namely the self-employed, the unemployed, minors, and those working abroad. In short, the informal sectors from the coverage of the government identification system. The passage of this bill is essential to provide Filipino citizens, both here and abroad, and resident aliens with a valid proof of identity, and to provide them a facility to conveniently transact business with the government, including government-owned and controlled and/or controlled corporations and subsidiaries and the private sector. This is meant to improve efficiency and transparency, enhance administrative governance, reduce corruption and curtail bureaucracy, avert fraudulent transactions and misrepresentations, strengthen financial inclusion, and to promote ease of doing business. In short, this bill is aimed at one of my favorite sayings when I was in Subic Bay and in the Department of Tourism, the 5 F's in government service: focus, fast, friendly, flexible, and forward-looking. The opposition to previous enactments establishing an identification system revolves principally on the perceived threat to security and violation of privacy. This representation submits, however, that this bill sufficiently addresses these issues. Section 17 prohibits any person from disclosing, collecting, recording, conveying, disseminating, publishing, or using any information of registered persons with the Philippine ID system, giving access thereto, or giving copies thereof, except in 3 instances. 1, when the registrant gives his or her consent. 2, when there is compelling interest of public health or safety. Or 3, upon the order of a competent court. Section 18, meanwhile, mandates the Philippine Statistics Authority, with the technical assistance of the Department of Information and Communications Technology, to implement reasonable and appropriate organizational, technical, and physical security measures to ensure that the information gathered for the Philippine Identification System, including information stored in the Philippine Identification System registry, is protected from unauthorized access, use, disclosure, and against accidental or intentional loss, destruction, or damage. The physical identification card that will be issued itself is required to contain security features as safeguards for data privacy and security and prevention against the proliferation of fraudulent or falsified identification cards. This means, Mr. President, that we are no longer faceless. We're no longer ID-less. This means, Mr. President, that we have included a substantial number of our population that were previously excluded by the previous executive orders issued by then President Gloria Macapagal-Arroyo. I am very happy and gratified about this because it allows for identification not just with an ID, but makes Filipinos feel, I belong. I am an ID card holder of my country, the Philippines. I am a Filipino. Once again, I congratulate the sponsor, Senator Lacson, and the Senate. And in view of the foregoing reasons, this representation seeks the immediate passage of the bill. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Sherwin Gatchalian, Mr. President,
Senator
will sponsor the measure.
Senator Gatchalian is recognized.
Magandang hapon po, Mr. President. Mr. President, esteemed colleagues, good afternoon to you all. In a developing country like the Philippines, one of the most critical responsibilities of government is to ensure the speedy and efficient delivery of basic social services to the people. The most underprivileged sectors of our society depend on the social welfare security net of the state to aid them in the fight against hunger and poverty. Thus, poor Filipinos have the most to gain from efficient governance. They also stand to lose the most when bureaucratic red tape hampers the capabilities of government to deliver. To illustrate, allow me to offer some insights gained from the inquiry launched by the Senate Committee on Economic Affairs to craft solutions which will shield the poorest Filipino families from the rising inflation we have been experiencing since the beginning of the year. One such solution we identified was to fast-track the rollout of the government's expanded unconditional cash transfer program, through which the state will endeavor to more than double the number of beneficiary families who receive cash transfers from the government. From 4.4 million families, now 10 million families categorized as poor or near poor will receive an additional 200 pesos per month from the government. As prices of essential commodities, especially food, continue to rise, the efficient delivery of the cash to program beneficiaries is essential to ensuring that working class Filipinos will be able to put enough rice on the table to feed their families. While this is certainly a worthy program, Mr. President, its implementation poses a potential bureaucratic nightmare. Identifying the additional 5.6 million working class families to bring into the program is a daunting task. Due to the remoteness and inaccessibility of their homes and communities, many of these people are off-grid, meaning that the amount of information the government has on them is severely limited. There might not even be any record of them at all in government databases. Mr. President, this lack of information puts them in danger of falling through the holes of the social welfare security net. This is something that we must address at once. Fortunately, Mr. President, the Philippine Identification System Act of 2018 is poised to address this issue head-on by establishing a central identification platform for all Filipino citizens. From the moment of birth, each Filipino citizen will be registered in the PhilSys registry. Through this centralized process, every Filipino will be given a Phil ID, a single identification card that can be used to transact with all government agencies providing frontline services. Through this system, Mr. President, the government will be armed with the information it needs to deliver critical social services efficiently and effectively, straight to the citizens who really need them. This is a crucial intervention right now, at a time when our impoverished countrymen are suffering under the great burden of rising prices. Aside from providing the backbone for the swift implementation of the cash transfer program, the PhilSys program will also allow us to implement other key points on our counter-inflation agenda, such as providing a 10% discount on public transportation fares and rice for poor Filipinos. Moreover, this bill will also help eliminate wastage by ensuring that these welfare resources are being distributed to real Filipinos who are truly qualified to receive them. Ghost beneficiaries and the like will soon be a thing of the past. Additionally, this system will allow Filipinos to easily transact with government agencies with less paperwork and, ultimately, less hassle. Mr. President, based on the foregoing, it is clear that this legislation is a win-win solution for the government and its citizens who will both benefit from the boost in government efficiency it will provide. I am a proud co-sponsor of this measure and I applaud the principal sponsor, Senator Ping Lacson, and other co-sponsors for championing this important piece of legislation. I urge members of this body to take swift action for its approval, especially given its positive implications for the rollout of the cash transfer program and other key counter-inflation measures. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Mig Subiri, Mr. President.
Senator Subiri is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, the Philippines remains as one of the only 9 countries in the world without a national identification system. As the Philippines continues to grow rapidly, the time is ripe for us to establish an efficient and unified identification system to accelerate the development process and ensure citizens' access to benefits brought by this growth. Identification systems enable the government to gain a comprehensive grasp on the nation's demography, identify the needs of the people, and accurately target and deliver services to their intended beneficiaries without leakages. Further, a national ID system cuts the red tape that has long haunted our bureaucracy and makes it easier for citizens to transact with their government. It facilitates the public's easy access to social services such as healthcare and education, as well as employment opportunities. Likewise, in an ID system rather streamlines identity authentication, thus minimizing fraud in transactions both in public and private sectors. Finally, Mr. President, a single integrated identification system strengthens our capability to ensure the safety and security of our people. This bill seeks to establish a Filipino identification system that aims for universal coverage for all Filipinos, whether residing in the Philippines or abroad. This unified comprehensive database aims to address the delays and inefficiencies in transaction with the government, while assuring the people's right to privacy and the security of the information contained therein. Therefore, we appeal to the body to pass this measure immediately. Thank you, Mr. President.
Majority Leader.
Mr. President, to give time to the other members to study the proposed measure, I move that we suspend consideration of Senate Bill 1738 and we will schedule interpellations at the soonest possible time, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, the motion is approved.
Mr. President, I move to transfer from the calendar for ordinary business to the calendars for special orders, House Bill 5160 under Committee Report 221.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
I move to consider House Bill 5160, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
May we ask the Secretary to read the title of the measure?
An act converting the municipality of Santo Tomas in the province of Batangas into a component city to be known as the City of Santo Tomas, Senator Sani Angara.
Mr. President, may I have a few minutes of suspension.
Session suspended.
Session is resumed.
Thank you, Mr. President. On the floor is the Charter Cityhood of Santo Tomas, Batangas, House Bill 5160 under Committee Report 221. I move to recognize the Chairman of the Committee on Local Government to sponsor the measure, Mr. President, Senator Sani Angara.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved. Senator Angara is recognized to sponsor House Bill establishing the city of Santo Tomas.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Majority Leader, distinguished colleagues. Mr. President, we rise today to sponsor House Bill 5160 under Committee Report number 221 for an act converting the municipality of Santo Tomas, Batangas into a component city. Ito ay pagpapatuloy ng tungkulin ng komite para lalong palakasin ang mga local government units or LGUs natin upang gawing mas matiwasay ang kanilang paglilingkod. We thank and laud the presiding officer, Senate President Pro Tempore Senator Ralph Recta, for his unwavering support during the deliberations of this measure. Naging mas malakas ang loob namin ihain ito sa plenaryo dahil sa magiting na Batanggenyo na tumulong isulong ito. Ginoong Presidente, ang umuusbong na bayan ng Santo Tomas ay isa sa mga may pinakamalaking populasyon sa buong bansa. According to the 2015 Census of Population, Santo Tomas, Batangas is the 10th most populous municipality in the country with close to 180,000 inhabitants. The municipality clearly meets the population requirement indicated by the Local Government Code. For the purpose of creation of a new city, the Bureau of Local Government Finance has certified the municipality's average annual income at more than 230 million, which is also well above the required amount for conversion. Katulad ng bayaning Tubong Santo Tomas na si Miguel Malvar, isa sa mga unang sumali sa himagsikan, ang bayan ay nangunguna din sa ilang progresibong pag-unlad. The burgeoning municipality hosts a 600 megawatt solar panel factory that is the first of its kind in the country. Beyond the thousands of jobs that its operations require, the inauguration also marks the first time solar panels would be Philippine-made. Another milestone is the establishment of a multinational paint supplier factory that will produce paints for many industries. The town celebrates bountifulness with its Mahaguyog Festival. Hence, if we provide enough resources for flourishing towns like Santo Tomas, then more Filipinos are given the chance to relish this bountifulness. Our national government agencies have drawn economic plans that entail the expansion of the economy outside urbanized cities to dissipate concentrated gains. But to accomplish this goal requires sound foundations not just of the national agencies, but also of our local governments. As a growing figure in ASEAN, we have directed focus in pursuing inclusive growth throughout the region. Ngunit dapat natin alalahanin na malaking bahagi ng ating pag-unlad ay nakadepende sa kalidad at kakayahan ng ating mga lokal na pamahalaan. Tayo mismo dapat ang manguna para isakatuparan ang ating mga plano sa pag-unlad. Maraming salamat po, Mr. President.
Thank you to the sponsor. Majority Leader.
Mr. President, I wish to co-sponsor the measure. I will just submit a manifestation or a copy of my co-sponsorship speech, Mr. President. The Santo Tomas, Batangas has a special place in my heart. This is where I got married in 1969, Mr. President.
Okay.
So, to give time to the other colleagues to study the proposed measure, I move to suspend consideration of House Bill 5160 under Committee Report 221.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved. Congratulations to the Majority Leader for getting married in Santo Tomas.
I have a 1 minute suspension, Mr.
Session is
President.
suspended.
Housing? Sino ba housing?
Si JV. Tumanda siya.
JV.
We're ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session is resumed.
Mr. President, I was supposed to call for the basic law for the Bangsamoro, but the interpelators will be ready tomorrow instead. So, with the indulgence of the sponsor, Santo Subiri, we will call the BBL early tomorrow, Mr. President. In the meantime, I move to resume consideration of Senate Bill 1574 under Committee Report 161.
Is there any objection? There being none, motions approved.
Mr. President, this is the proposed measure on the Philippine Energy Research and Policy Institute. The parliamentary status of the measure is that we are now in the period of interpellation. So I move to recognize the sponsor of the measure, Senator Win Gatchalian.
Senator Gatchalian is recognized to sponsor the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President. Energy Institute. Hindi, si... Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, this is actually the second time that this bill will be interpellated, and Mr. President, during the last interpellation, there was a suggestion from the Good Minority Floor Leader that to avoid bureaucracy or increasing bureaucracy in the government, he suggested to look for a mechanism wherein we can promote research but not add to the government's bureaucracy, Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. President, that's right. The last time this bill was called for consideration, we took the floor and raised our concerns and reservations over the creation of additional bureaucracy as a result of the proposed policy and research center. I made clear to the good sponsor that we have no objection to the issue of having research materials and studies made available in the field of energy, but we had reservations about creating another bureaucracy for this purpose. We discussed with the good sponsor certain setups in the University of the Philippines, wherein research grants are available, but there is no additional administrative staff. For example, in the UP Law Center, leadership and management positions can be filled up through administrative designations of the existing faculty. In that way, no new Plontilla positions are created. Likewise, research and research work can be done on a per project basis, giving priority to, for example, the faculty. It is in this sense that we are able to achieve the need for available study without additional bureaucracy, because we told the good sponsor that maybe these are models that we can look at insofar as the energy policy research aimed or desired by the bill can be achieved. So it is in that sense that we suggested to the good sponsor that in order to obviate lengthy debates, if he can present a similar model, as I said, we have seen one in the UP Law Center, where we can achieve the needed policy support for any issue without adding to the bureaucracy, and it is in that sense that the good sponsor said, yes, we will be looking for a model that we will present to the body. It is at this stage that I think the good sponsor has informed us of the session hall that he indeed has found some model, and we await this presentation of the good sponsor.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. And first of all, I would like to thank the Good Minority Floor Leader for pointing this out. And I'm one with the Good Minority Floor Leader in reducing the government's bureaucracy and making government more efficient and more attuned to the needs of our constituency. This is also a philosophy that I learned from the good Senator Ralph Recto, small government, but efficient and strong government. And Mr. President, so in the last 2 weeks, we consulted with the management of UP and consulted with several faculties of the UP. And just to give the body a brief history and background on where we got the inspiration on setting up a Energy Policy Institute. Mr. President, as we speak, there's a program existing in the University of the Philippines. This is the Energy Policy and Development Program, or EPDP for short. This program is specifically attuned to the energy sector. This program is funded by the US aid, and it's a 4-year program. The program, the total grant of the program is 119 million, and the program will more or less end this June of 2018, Mr. President. Mr. President, the output of EPDP, can you go to slide 10? These are the few of the papers and researches that EPDP generated. And these are independent research papers that we used in the Committee on Energy. Independence is very important so we can check and validate the policies that the Department of Energy come out with. And in fact, EPDP served as our resource persons for a few times in dealing with the different legislation that we propose, Mr. President. So this group is an existing group manned by different professors and faculty in the School of Economics, Mr. President. And in slide 34, Mr. President, upon the recommendation and suggestion of the Good Minority Floor Leader, we consulted with the University of the Philippines, and in fact, there is an existing center in the University of the Philippines, the Philippine Center for Economic Development, created by a presidential decree, PD 453, Mr. President. And Mr. President, the members of this PD, members of this center is slide 36. It's chaired by the NEDA, NEDA Director General, and the members are from different departments of the government, Mr. President. Mr. President, the objective of this center is really to come up with recommendation and the composition, come up with the recommendation from the various different offices, and the composition is a multi-departmental composition that will evaluate and recommend and conduct research on the economy and development of our country, Mr. President. So, Mr. President, in slide 37, so Mr. President, again, upon the recommendation of good Minority Floor Leader, we will now lodge this Energy Policy Institute underneath the Philippine Center for Economic Development, which is an existing center in the University of the Philippines. In fact, we will no longer create an institute, but institutionalize the program under this center, utilizing the existing faculty and utilizing the existing Board of Trustees, Mr. President. And in slide 38, and in slide 38, Mr. President, underneath slide 38, Mr. President, there are 3 existing divisions, the Special Projects Division, the Finance and Administrative Division, and the Research Division. These are all existing divisions. These are all existing manpower doing backroom operations for PCED, and we will no longer hire backroom manpower to manage the Energy Institute, but instead use the existing manpower to manage the backroom operations of the Energy Institute, Mr. President. So, in line with the recommendations of our good Minority Floor Leader, which I totally agree, because I also don't believe in increasing the bureaucracy and expenses of our government. In line with that, we will now lodge the Energy Institute under the PCED, Mr. President. All of these suggestions are still under works in terms of improving the bill, and at the appropriate time, Mr. President, we will revise the proposal or the said bill, and we will furnish the body with the revised and the improved version of the proposal, Mr. President.
Mr. President, with that manifestation, Mr. President, I move to close the period of interpellations on Senate Bill 1574.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is
Thank you, Mr. President. And once again, I thank the good Minority Floor Leader for the suggestion. And again, thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Mr. President. To give time to the senators to prepare for the period of amendments, I move to suspend consideration of Senate Bill 1574 under Committee Report 161.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, last February 19, 2018, the Senate passed on third reading Senate Bill 108 under Committee Report 81, prepared and submitted by the Committee on Education. This is otherwise known as the Lapu-Lapu Day or Adlaw ni Lapu-Lapu, which declares April 27 of every year a public working holiday throughout the country. Now, this measure was then transmitted to the House of Representatives last February 21, 2018 for their concurrence. Apparently, Mr. President, last January 24, House Bill 6782 was transmitted to the Senate entitled An Act Declaring April 27 of every year a special non-working holiday in the city of Lapu-Lapu, province of Cebu, in honor of the heroism of Lapu-Lapu in defending Mactan against foreign aggression depicted especially in the historic Battle of Mactan when he led Filipinos in fighting Ferdinand Magellan and his forces. That is the title of the House version, Mr. President. Now, aside from the conflicting provisions with Senate Bill 108 that we passed on third reading and House Bill 6782, it was referred to the Committee on Local Government, considering that it was a local bill. So, as a remedy, Mr. President, I would like to move, and with the concurrence of our body, and also the concurrence of the Chairman of the Committee on Local Government, that the primary referral of House Bill 6782 be transferred from the Committee on Local Government to the Committee on Rules for proper action. So, I so move, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion's approved.
What will happen now, after the approval, Mr. President, is that we might have to convene for a BICAM. Therefore, with the permission of the Chamber, I suggest to the Senate President to designate the Senate conferees to the bicameral conference or the bicameral committee on the disagreeing provisions of Senate Bill 108 and House Bill 6782, or the Lapu-Lapu Day, with Senator Richard Gordon as chairman and members Mig Subiri and Bam Aquino, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion's approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that we adjourn the session until 3 o'clock in the afternoon of Wednesday, March 14, 2018.
Session is adjourned.